Yo, 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 what's going on, everybody?
Woo, woo, woo. What's up?
Welcome to Bullies on Parade, episode 2, where we're going to be talking today about the American Bully Standard. There's a lot of variances, right? There's a lot of different registries that have different standards to go along with the standard. But at the same time, I feel like, and this is our perspective, we base ourselves and our stuff that we do in our kennel more towards the healthier dog, more towards the dog that we know, like the old school ABBT, like the Amstaff, where we believe the American Bullies come from. That's where the foundation breeds come from. So, I mean, at the end of the day,
we got to dig deep in this subject. I think could be a little non-controversial, even though a lot of people want to make it controversial. It's very black and white. But for those that don't know, we're going to let you know what a standard is. To start right there with what exactly does it mean?
Well, see, we take the standard into consideration when we're building a dog, when we're trying to build a show dog, especially build a show dog, because at the same time, us as a kennel, our main objective is to try to preserve the real American Bully. So it's very stringent and very difficult to sit here and pinpoint certain things. But what we will do is go over the basis of what we believe makes a good standard and makes a standard something that tries to preserve the breed, right?
That's right.
Because at the end of the day, it's like that key to being able to build correct foundation to a dog, right?
That's right.
So
it's a guideline, basically.
That's exactly what it is.
That's why I say it's non-controversial, because the guidelines have been written, and that is what creates a standard.
Right. Right.
What the guidelines have been written, depending on the registry,
right.
Says
there's different standards, and again, we're going to go back to how we consider the standard and how we read the standard, and implicate the standard into our breeding program and into classifying show dogs and which dogs make the cut to be in the show ring, the confirmation show ring. So, it's going to be a good dive into that, dude.
Yeah, I think I can't wait. We picked, through really scrutinizing the selection of registries, we did pick, obviously we have, we all know the AKC, once again, has one of the highest standards, but because
that's in any, that's in any registry, I think in any canine, any dogs, any breeds, I think the AKC is really that main, registry for the United States, because come on, we all know the Westminster, big shows like that, the Worlds and all this.
Well, they deal with and they written the standard for many breeds.
Right. So, to us, it would be most definitely an honor for the AKC to recognize the American Bully as a full-on breed, but the realness is that we're so far away from it that I don't believe that at this particular moment in time we're anywhere close to that, and that's the real factor of it. But on the positive end, we do see the Amstaff, and we do see that in a bully aspect. The Amstaff does qualify for a lot of... The AKC only takes the Amstaff because it does not accept the American Pit Bull Terrier. It doesn't recognize that breed. So the AKC only takes the Amstaff as a recognized breed for them. And, I think that the closest standard to if we were to be in a situation like that, where we would be accepted and a big registry like that would really take notice in the breed and say, hey, you know what? These guys in this community are doing things right. They're building good dogs. They're building healthy dogs.
They're building real quality show dogs with the depth in the gene pool that can substand all that, because I feel like we're still at a point where there's a lot of changes. A lot of people think differently. Phenotypes are different. Everybody's, kind of picking and choosing what American Bully to go to. And the truth is that's why there is a standard. And today we're going to go over the WBA standard and the UKC standard and maybe a little bit of the ABKC standard. To tell you the truth, this was one of those things where we sat down and we really, really, really thought about it, man. And we were like, there's going to be a lot of things that we talk about that maybe a lot of people will have something to say, I mean,
they shouldn't, because once again, we're discussing what has been written,
right?
And scrutinizing it as best as we could.
We really have. We
had a tough one with this one. We did have a tough one with this one.
Yeah.
This was like I say, I don't know if you'd agree, but it's not necessarily controversial because these things are written.
Right.
So you go by the guidelines of what is written.
Right.
But there is a few different ways of writing these things that could be read in a different manner.
Right. And today, I think, through the research that we've done and the way that we build our dogs in our kennel, we base our structure and our guidelines off of, we believe, one of the most stringent and real to the point standards, and built for the preservation of the breed. We believe that, and so to us, we follow that standard because as we build dogs according to the standard, then we see those dogs flourish and run and be active and moving and you start to notice like, well, I've built dogs to this standard before and now I'm building dogs to the standard that I believe is for a healthier dog, that we believe is for a healthier, future for the breed, to give the breed a little more longevity and substance, of course, and really let, registries like, even more so the UKC, the AKC, at least recognize that we are trying. As a community, we're trying. We're trying to make better dogs. We're not straying too far away. I think that now the fab in the exotics is kind of dying down here in the US, I know in Europe it's going on pretty strong right now, I know they have that like fluffy stuff going on there too. And, we have nothing against any dogs at all.
Absolutely.
We're just speaking from the perspective of the American Bully, right? And the perspective of our kennel. I believe that all those things and all those changes that were made and, doing all these things really put a real damper on our community as far as the other registries looking at us thinking, well, what's going on over there? They can't even get it together enough to be able to build, a good dog, a good foundationally solid dog. And not only that, but healthy. Right?
Right. Which it's a key trait. It's a key trait to the American Bully, conserving its health, and to any dog, I think.
Right.
That's
how we feel.
It should be a big issue.
Yeah, we feel that way. It should be any dog. If you're building any dog, whether it's a Doberman or a German Shepherd or whatever it may be, in order to really understand how to build it, you got to look at the instructions. Right?
Yeah, by the way, that's, we were just talking to a friend from Spain who came down, guest judge coming in. He says, and now this was off topic. Imagine if here or in the Westminster they say no more cutting Doberman's ears, no more cropping.
Oh, right.
Right. And would that change the standard?
Well, I mean, to me, a cropped ear doesn't make no difference.
Oh.
But aesthetically, I like a dog with nice cropped ears, nice and tidy. That's just my preference. Not everybody has that preference, but, and we respect that. But to me, I've always kind of been that person to have those nice tight cuts on the dogs and stuff. So our kennel has always ran with that. And we believe that if it's a show dog, then, you know, up until the point where maybe it's banned and we can't do it anymore, we're going to continue to do it, you know, because we believe that it's a beauty pageant, you know, and just cleaning around the head makes the head stand out a little bit more, gives it more shape. You can see more of the cheek. There's a purpose for it for us too. Not just aesthetically, but also the health wise. They're easier to clean. They don't get as infected all the time.
Yeah.
You know, they're always aerating. So when you give them a bath or a shower and they get water in their ear, it's easier for them to dry out,
shake it off,
you know, and shake it out. So there's a purpose to it. You know, it's not just for whatever, but yes, in Europe, they're banning and I believe in the federation in Mexico and a lot of canine federations out there in South America, they're now, you know, accepting dogs without cropped ears, and usually the Dobermans and all of these other dogs, you know, the boxers, you know, now they're not doing it anymore. So we might see a change in that, but to me, it makes no difference. If you're looking at a dog, the only situation there would be the ears set. But as far as the cropped or not, that doesn't matter to me. As long as the ear set is correct, you know, that's how I see it.
And, you know, that's just one of those little off the subject topics that hits because of the fact that can you interpret a standard differently?
Right.
You see that in registries through the judging, through competition.
Right. I mean, when we go to shows, you know, you go with the best intent, right? But you also are in the hands of the judge that you're there, that's there doing his job. And, you know, I wouldn't say that I've been to places where I feel like there's not enough education, you know, but at the same time, I feel like we can all be more educated. You know what I'm saying? We can all be more educated. So it's not a matter of whether they know it or not. It's really a matter of can they follow what's written on the standard? And can those judges interpret that standard more clearly than you and I? You know what I'm saying? Or than somebody who's not a judge and stuff like that. So, you know, that's a key factor in all of this is can the judging be interpreted correctly through what they see on a piece of paper?
Like
and that's what we're going to dive into.
Yeah, we said this before. We're going to make sure that, you know, we hold ourselves as part of the community accountable, but we're also going to hold our registries accountable too.
Right.
They are the ones that keep us in this perspective with written standards and guidelines.
Right.
They should be the ones that uphold them too.
Right. And I believe in all fairness that, you know, not every registry and again, we haven't competed in every registry. So you know, I'm speaking from just our experiences, you know, the registries that we go to, I feel like, you know, there's a few things that can be better. You know,
always get better.
There's a few things that can be better, but also there's a few things that I've noticed that are a lot better now. You know what I'm saying? And that have changed now through time. And that's not just one or two or three registries. That's the whole community in itself. You know, we are starting to get better at understanding the standard. I do see a lot more dogs with better backs and, you know, good angulation and, you know, nice tight feet, nice straight fronts. And there's good dogs now. When we first began actually really diving in and building the dog, we would see all kinds of wrecks and we didn't really understand the standard fully until you start understanding it fully. I don't know if that makes sense, right? But you can't understand it until you get to a point where you're building a dog and now you can see the things that are happening as the puppy's progressing, as the puppy's growing, you know, angulation, these things are happening and, you know, well, that one, you know, is going to have a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but overall, you know, it's a pretty solid dog and let's keep it around and see what it does in the future. But if we didn't understand those standards, it would be extremely difficult to be competitive, right?
Right. I think one thing is one thing about the standard. It's meant to better the dog,
to better us, to better the breed, and it guides us
to keep the breed organized, and what we're all trying to build, to keep a solid foundation. And we go again. I believe that you need to read the standard without visually looking at the pictures. Nowadays, we make it a lot easier, and registries make it a lot easier because they give you a picture of the dog and a picture of the face and what it should be and what it shouldn't be and all that. But I believe that you should take the time to do this yourself at home, right? And read the standard, which to you makes more sense. But read it and do not look at pictures. Picture all of what you're reading in your head. Try to draw that perfect image that you're reading through your own visual, right?
All right, guys, I'm a picture guy, so I love to read, but show me a picture.
Right?
Show me the picture.
No, and we all agree. Like now it's just become easier.
Right? Yeah, it's lazy, I'm not going to lie, but hey, man, with this, the way the things go, it's just go. Right. Give me a picture. And with that being said, we have.
So we are going to kick it off with the WBA written standard. And, like I said, we are going to heavily dive into that standard because that's the standard that we've studied the most.
Yes.
Really. To be honest, we've read the ABKC, the UKC. I appreciate the UKC too, though. Even though a lot of people may think like, oh, UKC, this, and that, they didn't even want us there and this and that. I understand. But when you look at the standard and you don't put a tag on the registry and you just look at the standard, there's a big difference, in the ABKC and the UKC standard in health and in preservation, and these are things that we're going to leave to you guys, for you guys to really dive into and look at that yourselves. But we're going to go over a few things from the WBA written standard. And one of these is the mission statement. The mission statement's important, I believe, because it gives you why it's written, right? The purpose, right? So the World Bully Association is dedicated to establishing the standard for the American bully, equipping judges and breeders with guidelines that can uphold the breed's quality and progress by promoting consistency at an international level. The objectives and purpose: breeders and judges are entrusted with upholding the breed's integrity by preventing any harmful extreme that could compromise their health or functional nature. It is important to prevent the reproduction of such detrimental traits. Any variances from this standard is to be seen as overall objective and subject to change, cannot happen unless these things are severe in gravity. Assessment corresponding directly to its impact on the dog's well-being and its ability to fulfill the roles, whether in competition, in companionship, in sport, or in other activities. This standard serves as a point of reference for both judges, breeders, and breed enthusiasts. So, basically, it's guidelines for the judges. That's basically what it means. It's guidelines for the judges, and for any breeder that's trying to build a dog, these are the things that you need to look at when you're building the dog, right?
Yeah, it's an oath. It's an oath. You're basically taking an oath, and you're basically being upheld to that oath that you're taking to do the right thing as to when you're breeding, and to the standard of, in particular, this is the American Bully standard,
right,
from the WBA. There's a written standard in all registries.
We can go over the UKC.
Not for the AKC, because they only have for the carrier, the Staffshire. So AKC is not in the table today. Even though they are a high registry, right?
You can look at
them and like, wow.
Well, you can look at the American Staffordshire and kind of have an idea of what they're shooting for.
But you're not going to find an American Bully standard there.
Never, because they don't see the American Bully as a correct dog, you know?
So we talked about that, you know?
Right.
But in this case, here is...
Well, and here's one of the things that when I first started reading this standard and I started realizing what the purpose of this was, you know, here's one difference in the ABKC standard to the WBA standard is the fact that, you know, the WBA explicitly prioritizes health over exaggerated features, you know, related to size or mass. You know, the association discourages breeding practices that favor such extremes and advises the judges against recognizing such specimens with awards. Right. The overachieving aim is to safeguard the breed's vitality and functional capabilities. That was a head changer for me, you know, because I like a functional dog. I like a dog that we can take out to run, that we can take with our family to go, you know, my wife loves going to the beach. Take the dog to the beach without being scared that the dog's going to, you know, die a heat stroke or, you know, can't walk more than, you know, 10 feet and then the dog doesn't want to move. Like, I can't have a dog like that in our lives. You know, we're the type of people who are constantly moving. So we need an active, healthy dog.
Right.
But damn, I love a bull. You know what I mean? Like,
I love a bull.
I love a bull. So to me, I mean, don't get me wrong, that, you know, when we had the American Pit Bull Terriers, that was great. But, you know, there's really nothing like the American Bully. And so to us, once we understood that, you know, we want to build a healthy dog, we lean more towards the WBA standard, you know? We really do.
Yeah, we do. It's worked for us. It's really worked for us, and it keeps us honest. We understand that things in writing can be interpreted differently. There's a wide spectrum of how you interpret a word, like girth. You know?
Or mass, right? Like mass, you can interpret mass in like a whole different situation, you know
what I mean?
So, I mean, what is mass? A big, huge dog, tall, big, wide, or just big, thick, fat? Like, what is it, you know? So we understand that.
Yes.
And, you know, the one thing that I can say is clarity is key, you know?
Because what's it called?
In order to be able to build a good functional dog, you gotta have the directions, you know, and depending on what directions you take, you know, that's the kind of dog you're gonna build if you really follow that, you know.
Loose words, like loose words in a standard, words that can be broadly interpreted are like loose floose. You know, it's a disqualifying quality here.
Well, it's undesirable, right? And so some of the main characteristics in the WBA standard is the American Bully breed is primarily a companion breed, exhibiting confidence and enthusiasm for life. Despite its powerful appearance, the breed is a kind, friendly, making it an excellent family dog. The ideal American Bully has the athleticism to excel in any type of event due to their great strength, intelligence, and lack of aggressive behavior towards humans. It is not characteristic of the breed to be in any which way aggressive towards humans. It is extremely undesirable. So that, to me, in itself, again, speaks a little bit more on, okay, now, you know, they're telling us, okay, we're going to try to give you a guideline to build a healthy dog. This is meant for a healthy dog, for an athletic dog, but also it needs to be a family dog. It can't be a dog that just boom, bolts out and it's gone or whatever, or sees any other human and human aggressive. It has to be a family dog. So that's pretty clear in itself as well, you know?
Very key, very key. Like I said, and it shouldn't be able to be misinterpreted, but sometimes I've seen some pretty aggressive dogs at the show.
Well, right. Let's be honest.
But that's not always the dog's fault.
Sometimes it has to do with the owner or even the handler sometimes, I know because me as a handler, when I do handle dogs for our kennel, luckily we've been able to work on the dogs, but sometimes I help, some of our friends and, I have never put my hands on their dogs before. So when I get the dogs, sometimes, it's hard to contain the dog. And until I have a few little steps with them, then, I can get them going. But yeah, let's be honest though, the American Bully comes from the ABPT, and the ABPT was a working dog. I personally, myself, and this is our kennel, I don't like a passive dog. I like a dog that can go, that can turn it up, that can protect my family, that can also, let me know when people aren't righteous in my life and need to watch out, because the dog will let you know.
Too close.
Getting too close, and so I like that. I don't want to take that away from him either. I personally, I'm not the kind of person who wants aggressive dogs, but I don't want a pansy ass either. I want a dog that can take care of my family when I'm not around,
That's right. That's right.
So it doesn't need to be necessarily human aggressive, but, I believe that the American Bully is a universal breed. It can do pretty much anything if you give the dog time, and teach the dog. It can do pretty much anything. So, it is very universal.
We'll get to some of its physical traits.
Yes.
Now, in this, mind you, we are at the same time that we're discussing this, what standard should be applied best from our perspective. We're also trying to inform of the ability to misinterpret the standard too.
Right.
We will talk about. Let's talk about head.
Well, now let's talk about the head in the UKC. Okay. Let's do that.
That's great.
Let's talk about the head in the UKC. So the American Bully breed's head is unique in a key characteristic. It is large and broad, but never disproportionate to the overall dog. So what does that mean, dude? To me, it means that the dog's head should not be bigger than its body. I know that a lot of people out here in the community are like, look at that guy's head, man. Look at that guy's headpiece, Oh man, it's humongous. And the dog is, half the size of the head. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's just not, there's no proportion to that, so this is good. It tells you, that the head should be proportionate to the body.
There are those registries that will allow or not disqualify certain extreme features.
Well, let's be honest.
But
the ABKC loves that kind of head. It loves a big head. I'm not saying that it's bad, but if we're looking at a beauty pageant and we think of the dog shows as a beauty pageant, then I think that, yeah, most definitely,
It is known to allow the most extreme features to continue
to be in the forefront, So let's see. So the top skull is flat without dome between the ears. There is a well-defined, moderately deep stop. The flews are always clean with tight lips. So what does that mean?
No loose flews.
Thank you.
But you see that, that this is continuously keeping us honest.
Right.
You see a dog with loose flews. You see a dog with a problem.
It goes on to say cheeks. The cheek muscles are proportionate and free of wrinkles. Okay. The head appears square from the front and side without any wedges appearing in between the muzzle. I mean, that's pretty clear. The head should be a nice, tight, knit face without loose flews. No over excessive wrinkles like a bulldog. And that's another reason why, we really choose these standards, because they both are very similar. The UKC and the WBA are very similar.
And we're not going to go word per word on them, against them, but we'll just in the same concept that we feel comfortable.
Because we know these standards, you know, like I personally, and these are the dogs that we're building, you know, so that's why this is more of our style of dog.
Like I said, it works for us. If it works for you guys, you know, in the community, we're all going to find our place.
Right.
And we're all going to go compete in those places. And like I said, this is for us to keep holding ourselves and our registries completely. I just lost my track of mind.
No,
but if they're messing up,
it keeps the registries honest. You know what I'm saying? And because you call them on it and things like that. No, that's a good thing. You know. Let's see. The muzzle is broad and blocky and slightly square. The length of the muzzle is shorter than the length of the skull. Okay, by 3/4 of an inch, 35%. So what does that mean? That the muzzle should be 3/4 of the inch of the whole round on the side. So if you take the muzzle and you put it behind, it should be 3/4 of the length of the skull. When you put it in front, that's the length you have. So you shouldn't have this bulldogish front that eventually becomes brachiocephalic and it starts hindering the dog from breathing. You know, we know because we also breed English bulldogs.
That's right.
So we understand, you know, and there's big difference. There's a big difference with our American bullies and our English bulldogs. Our American bullies are specifically that type of dog. You know, that active dog, that go type of dog, but also can lay there with you in bed and chill, you know, can be in the garage hanging out when everybody's sitting there kicking it. Dog's sitting there, no big deal. It's comfortable. And, you know, it has a lot of confidence. Doesn't really shake, you know? So with that being said, we'll move forward into, let's talk about bites for a second here, dude. Okay. I feel like in the community nowadays, bites is becoming a thing that's just like, oh, well, you know, I like a bigger head instead of a good bite, you know, but let's be honest here. Okay. When a judge comes up to your dog to evaluate your dog, what's the first thing that the judge does, right? He stands in front of the dog. He looks at the front of the dog, the build of the dog. He looks up, looks at the face, the expression, and then what does he do? He says, show me the bite. Or may I see the bite? And they go in and look at the bite. There is a specific reason for that. Why we should try to continuously build on learning good bites. Because it's a solid foundational trait. It's not just for, you know, if you don't have a good bite, it doesn't make any difference. You know, no. You got to see it as in a matter of, can that dog survive? If we all pass away right now and the American bully is left, can that dog go off in the wild and survive?
Not with the bad bite.
It's difficult to say, right? So
it's going to have a tough time.
And not only that, but there's a purpose for it. A good bite on a whelping mother is needs to be there, especially on a female, you know, because when they birth these puppies in the wild, they go in and they cut it themselves. Yep. And if they can't do that, the babies will suffocate. The breed will never be able to continuously grow because the females are lacking that ability to be able to snip off the umbilical cord cleanly. So there's a purpose for all of this. It's not just that it's a look or whatever. It's the actual preservation of the breed, right?
Yeah. And, you know, we shouldn't leave these words subjectively. You know, we should know exactly what they mean. And there is no subjectiveness to these things like, you know, a bad bite. There's no question, no doubt in anybody's mind that it's a health concern.
Yes. And I believe that, you know, that's a solid trait that any breeder, and I do believe this, any breeder should really, really, really understand that that's an important trait, man.
Shoot, homie, I got a bad bite myself. I'm telling you, it's a health concern. You know, shout out to all these dentists out there that help people with the bad bites.
Most definitely, homie. That's our fault. We got bad bites. You know what I'm saying? So
I've been sucking on this rotten tooth for a while now. Gotta give me some, what is that? The fish moxie.
The fish moxie.
The fish moxie, go back old school.
Amoxicillin, straight up, man.
All right, let's move on ahead.
So now, you know, we talked about a little bit of the mouth, the teeth. And again, we're not going to go over word for word over these things. We're reading, and these are the characteristics, and these are our opinions on what's going on. You know, now, if you guys have any questions, you know, right now we're a little too far away from the screen, but you know, we are going to go back over and look at all these questions and
chop it up amongst each other too.
And we will be answering.
Mad love to all you guys that are watching, and
definitely,
and
man.
if you have any, this is a community. You know, we're not here trying to bark orders or tell people what to do.
We're just giving you guys our interpretation. Right?
And these are the key things that are important. Like the standard talks about the teeth. Well, the teeth are important.
Right.
This talks about the eyes. The eyes are important. Everything. You know,
it has a purpose of why. You know, it has a purpose of why. Now, it's up to you guys to go back and do the research. You know what I'm saying? Do the research. We encourage you guys to do that, man.
Just at the end of the podcast, we're going to give you guys a little homework piece real quick, just to see.
Definitely.
Just to see.
For yourselves. You know what I'm saying? For yourselves.
If you guys get the same answer we got, because like we said, we were banging our heads on this one because, you know, we needed something that was solid.
Well, and we needed to ask an outside source other than ourselves from keeping us to being biased.
That's right.
That was really one of the reasons why we did that. To make sure that we weren't trying to be biased, that this is just our interpretation of what we believe is healthier for our kennel in the production of our dogs. And for us, it's basically a blueprint of preservation for a breed. So if we can understand it and move forward with it, I think we're going to be in great shape. These are just our thoughts on it and how we interpret the standard.
It's out there. It's easy to get. Blow it up, put it on your wall, put it on your kennel so that, you know, you stay true to that.
Constant reference, man. Yeah. And I have seen, you know, that I've been sent a bunch of really cool, anatomy illustrations.
Shout out to all you guys putting out those cool illustrations.
Yeah. And the structural anatomies and the skeletal anatomies. And, you know, those are all excellent, man. And I've posted some of that stuff on our own, Instagram, the Bully Den Instagram. And I've also posted some of those on Facebook. So, you know, go back on there, check those out. I will be reposting those as we go move forward with this. And, you know, hopefully we can give you guys a better understanding, you know? I mean, it took us a minute, dude. Like this wasn't like we just sat there and we're like, hey, you know, we're going to read this and we're going to understand it. Nah, man, it took us a minute. It took us a minute to really understand, but also we had to go and see the dogs ourselves.
Oh yeah.
We had to see that type of dog in order to understand, like, that's not a functional dog. That's not the kind of dog that, you know, can survive eventually. If something were to happen in the wild, you know, can it survive? That's really what it comes down to, right? So now we move forward into, talked about the teeth. Let's talk about eye set. Okay. Eye set is extremely important. It's extremely important because, you know, it allows for the dog you can sense the expression of the dog. Now, let's do this. Let's look at the eye set of that new, what do they call that? Brazilian bull. Right? Now, I don't mean to be disrespectful in any which way, but damn, that eye set is super close, bro. You know what I mean? It almost looks like the dog is cross-eyed. You know, like, to me, what's the purpose of that? Is there a purpose to it? You know, or is it just a new thing that, like, hey, you know what? We're going to make this type of dog now. You know, like, I don't understand. If we're all going in the direction of trying to build a good American bully, then we all need to stick to the game plan, whether it's the UKC standard or the WBA standard or any standard that you believe is healthy for what you're doing. Then hey,
yeah, there's always those rebels, but like we said, stay true to the mission statement of your registries.
Yeah.
Because if you're in this to win this and for the long run, that's going to take you a long way. The mission statement really defines this standard for this particular breed.
Yeah. And so moving forward with the eyes, they should be a medium shape, almond shape, a medium size almond shape, and well apart. On the low end of the skull, all colors are equally acceptable except blue.
And sometimes you can really totally tell where there is wording that needs to be clarified.
Well, right. And this is the UKC one that we're reading right now, too.
Well,
so
in a sense,
we're kind of bouncing a little back and forth between the two WBA and this.
We know, and we can criticize. We can criticize and say.
Now, here's the thing with that. I believe that, in the WBA standard, it's a little bit clearer on that end, right? Because not only does it tell you, like, look, listen, you can have almond shape. They need to be at a certain distance apart. They need to be of medium size. They need to be like an almond. It's describing it for you. But now here comes the situation where a lot of us, didn't understand. You look at different eye colors, but when you start looking at genetics and you start looking at eye colors and all these things and you start, connecting the dots, you start to realize that there's certain colors, there's certain patterns in eye sets, there's certain colors in eyes where one is, brown and the other one is blue. Those are signs that there's some kind of malfunction going on there. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not common for our breed to have that.
Right.
Those are more common for Merle dogs and stuff like that to have those kind of eyes. As far as the American Bully, I feel like, come on, man, the community already knows. Come on. We know that the color of eyes should not be, these crazy extreme colored eyes,
when you're looking at something that shouldn't be, and then when you're looking at something magnificent and like, man, wow.
It all kind of blends together, now you don't have one pink or pink eye around and then a blue eye and then, it's like, no, it should be, something that you look at and is equal of color, but also that also lets you know that the dog doesn't have any strains of genetics that's unwanted. You know what I'm saying? I see it like that. I see it when I look at dogs' eyes. I can tell, certain things by just the color, if one color is calico and the other one is brown, like there's something off. And if you can't tell that, I mean, it seems to me like that's like a little bit of common sense, right?
I mean, not just that, that's an obvious, but as you were saying, the distance, I mean, I think that sometimes the measurement is not being treated with specifications.
Right.
Like the measurement. I mean, how easy is it to say this is how much the distance will be? Depending on,
it's just difficult to say that because as the dog grows, they sometimes dogs develop different, man. Some dogs don't, their heads don't pop into, and we know this, like until like a year and a half, then boom, all of a sudden it's a different dog. So, but the eye set, the eye color, the eye shape, that doesn't really change. You know what I'm saying? So, I believe that definitely, that's something to look at, when you're building a dog, the expression means a lot, especially to judges that are looking for that expression, and I tend to, when I'm in the ring, I tend to try to have my dog, in an intense expression, because I believe it just solidifies to the judge that he's got confidence, that he's not scared, that he can be in there, and look at me, that bravado of the dog,
now you're getting into techniques.
Well,
not necessarily standard here, but
right.
But definitely something that the American Bully needs to have confidence.
Right.
You know.
Right. Most definitely. The ears, and this is the WBA. The ears should be positioned high and may either be natural or cropped without any particular preference. I like that. There goes that answer that we were talking about, right? There's other registries that may have it a little different on the ear set, but here it specifies this. If the ears are natural, they should ideally be worn in as a rose-shaped ear, almost like the bulldogs, where they just kind of fold backwards. They don't lean forward. They kind of fold back in attention. So that to me as well, that really shows you.
Specific trait. Yeah.
Yes, that really shows you that it doesn't matter about the aesthetic part of that ear. And even doing the rosebud, it's easier to shake out the water just in case something falls in there or water gets in there. When it's rosebudded, they can shake their ear out, and it's a lot easier for them to shake their ear out than when the ear is dropped over and folded over the lobe. You know what I mean?
That's right.
So, a serious fault is pointed, long and flat and wide ears and are not preferred. So what does that mean? Ears that are standing up and are wide like this, almost like the Australian Shepherd dogs, you know what I mean? Like that, if that makes any sense. If you guys ever seen them, their ears are boom, you know what I mean? So,
it's not characteristic of the standard of the American Bully.
Well, I wouldn't say it's just undesirable. You know what I'm saying? It's just undesirable. It's undesirable. But, so we moved on to that, the neck. Now, here's the thing. We're not even going to get into sizing of neck and all that. We all understand, dude. We all understand where the placement of the neck is to the withers and the end of the skull. We understand what that is. We don't got to get in there in depth and all that. But what it should be is, a powerful neck, very muscular neck. You know what I mean? There's a slight arc to it, so that you can see the arc of the neck, so we keep in mind it's an American Bully, a bull. Think of that. You know what I mean? What a bull looks like. If you would take a picture of a bull that's getting ready to come down, boom, it's that big arc of a neck. I mean, we all like that. I like that.
That's right.
I love a nice neck, man, muscled up neck, so there's really no going about it. A serious faults in the UKC is a short neck that would interfere with functional ability. The neck too long as it to be out of proportion with the body. So what they would call that, what is that? A giraffe neck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's coming from the UKC standard.
And it's the same in the WBA.
It's relatively the same, just worded a little different. But in all actuality, both standards to us are for the preservation of the breed. Now, we're not disrespecting any other registry or any other standard, but these, like we said, and we'll say it again, these are the standards that we base our building off of, right? In a sense,
Well, it's what we consider to be the standard,
right?
And that allows us to build what we're building,
right? The body. I think we all know, what's an easty-westy. I think what we don't really understand yet is lengths between what in reference to what, and what when you're building should be equal to certain lengths, right? So like, for example, the top of the withers to the bottom of the elbow should be the same size as the elbow to the wrist. And then those two combined should be the exact same as the length of the dog, right?
Yeah. You got to worry about all those exaggerated features. A big chest will hinder the movement.
Right, because if the chest is too wide, then the dog starts to paddle.
Yeah, come on,
and
guys.
pushes his elbows out.
Come on, guys.
So instead, Keep it tight. It also considers a nice deep drop into the chest. Yes, but how deep? Right? That's where we get into these little things, like how deep, right? Common sense.
Anything that would interfere with the normal movement.
So if the chest drop is too much and the dog now is doing this to get around his chest, it's too much of a gap or too much width in the chest. So what needs to happen is bring him in, so his elbows tuck in. So his elbows are right underneath him, right underneath his shoulders. Keep his front straight, and we all know. I mean, from that point on, you have Easty Westy. Come on. Very basic and simple.
That's right.
Very basic and simple. The four quarters. Okay, here we go. Talking about the four quarters, and we were just talking about this. The shoulder is a muscle with blades that are long, wide, and well laid back. The upper arm is roughly equal in length to the shoulder blade. The joints at apparent right angle. The forelegs are strong and muscular with large and round bones. So what does that mean? I mean, it's a bone dog. It's a girthy dog by nature, not by weight, not by weight. So it shouldn't be a fat dog. Just genetically, it should have the bone and the size and the mass, right? Not overly exaggerated though too. See, that's where you kind of have to have that guideline yourself,
Well, you should know. You should know what you're shooting for, where you're going with your breedings, with your type. So those are important to have in consideration with these type of guidelines.
Absolutely. And another thing that we believe is super important, super, super, super important, is pasterns.
Oh yeah.
Pasterns can make or break a dog, man. And if you don't, take care of those pasterns when they're puppies and take care of their feet when they're puppies, it's going to be really hard for the dog to really develop into an unrestricted movement, because he'll constantly be throwing his feet like Donald Duck, right?
That's right. Like a
duck walk, and throwing his feet everywhere instead of actually moving. And what do we say? The same thing in the wild. If they were running after prey, could that dog keep up with the rest of the pack to kill that prey?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Eventually he would get tired and, eventually he ain't eating because the rest of the pack got to that, whatever it was, and they ate it, and now you ain't getting nothing.
Yeah.
Eventually and in nature, those type of faults and those type of undesirable traits, they get eliminated. Nature eliminates those,
Take care of your feet, for crying out loud.
Like they told Forrest Gump, take care of your feet, Lieutenant Dan, But yes, another good important thing. I don't think we need to get into high rears and all that. Come on,
Roachbacks,
high rears. I mean,
all the bad stuff. Bottom line, once again, we're not running through the standards,
but also
to criticize.
No, we're not. But we all understand what a good back is. I think we all understand what a good back is.
Yeah.
And we all understand what a high rear is and a roach back is. A Frenchie should have a roach back in his standard. An English bulldog has a roach back in his standard.
That's right.
An American bully does not have a roach back in his standard.
and we're just kind of running through the things that are in the standard.
Right.
And we've chosen the UKCA and we've chosen WBA to
just
kind of run them down real quick. And we're throwing some of the ABKC stuff there too, because we're knowledgeable on all these registries and all their standards that they have. But
there is one thing certain, that I believe the ABKC looks for a more extreme kind of dog. That's what I believe. I mean, I see it. I see the dogs that are winning, and I'm not saying anything by any means in a bad way. No, I'm just saying that it's a different dog,
I think they've always been about mass, whether it's small mass or big mass. It's just those extreme features. It's there.
But where's the fine line?
That's why we talk about the different standards and how sometimes their wording is a little loose so that in their shows and competitions,
Right.
their judges can judge with a broader spectrum of what mass
Right.
is. And like we said, we encourage this standard because we're very in tune with health.
Yes.
And we like this standard. Shoot.
Yes.
And
We basically have built, our main foundation off of the blueprint. You know what I'm saying? So it definitely, it took us a long time to understand it, but I think we're at a point where we can clearly see what it's trying to tell us, and another important thing is, and we talked about backs, another important thing is the tail set, and I say this all the time, I will keep a female, or I wouldn't even say keep, I would breed to a female that has a kink tail over a female that has a bad tail set. And this is a good one. What would you guys do? And write it down in the comments. What would you guys prefer, to breed to a female? Now, obviously, in the best world, you don't want to breed to
either one.
None of that, but
the devil or the one you don't know.
But all in all, right on there, which one would you prefer? Would you breed to a dog with a kink tail, or would you breed to a dog that has a nice straight tail but a bad tail set?
What problem do you want to have?
What problem do you want to have?
And we could talk about that and what could occur in the future.
Right. But, a fault is a kink, a knot, or a fused tail. What's a fused tail? Like a bulldog. Instead of having the tail here, it's tight to itself, and it has a very hard time pooping, and some bulldogs, when they're puppies, that's what happens to them, and it's hard. If they're not right up on game and cleaning and doing this, it happens to those kind of dogs. So in the American Bully, there should have never been bulldogs. So that trait, as far as a fused tail, is non-existent. I don't believe that should even be part of your stuff. Now, kinks, knots, and all that, absolutely. So you can have them. It's just something. It's just what it is. Now, people can tell you, oh man, I've never had a litter with a kink tail and this and that, but you don't know until you really start breeding. Till you really start breeding, because you start bringing in generations from the back and this and that, and you start seeing where things were happening, what things were changing.
There's always going to be something to fix, but like we said, this is the standard to walk us through the pastures, the body, the back, every aspect of the dog. The standard should tell you, without a difference of opinion, what to look for and what to strive for.
Yeah. Like we said, it's a blueprint, and it's just how you interpret it, right? And I feel like in there's a lot of situations where everybody gets caught up in, the judges don't know what they're doing, and and this is in all registries, like, let's be honest, our community tends to have that shit,
Let's tap into that real quick. We have a little bit of time on that.
Yeah.
What would be interpreted as a serious fall, or when do they say, hey, this is a serious fall?
Well, in the tail, a disqualification fault is a screw tail, a bobbed or docked tail. So, the American Bully should never have a crop tail,
so
like a boxer would.
Yeah, what happens when you go into one of those really, really nasty faults in the show ring? Is that's it? You're not going to win? You're not getting awarded for? Should you be automatically disqualified?
Well, here again, the judges and the dogs that are going to the shows are not competing against other dogs. They are competing to see who is the closest to the written standard of its class.
So when you have a serious fault, like we've talked about, like a roach bag or something that is detrimental to the breed,
right?
What should we hold our judges accountable for?
Right. That's a great question. What are the things we should hold our judges accountable for? In every registry, what are the things that we should hold the judges accountable for? Now, is it the educational part? Is it the actual judgmental part? Is it the actual visual that they don't understand? These are all good things. If our community can reach out and start actually throwing these things out there and being like, hey, well, I'm not so comfortable with this and this. Maybe, the registry, whatever registry it may be, can work on this, and this. I'm very sure that there's somebody there that'll listen to you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm very sure that in time, those things can get sorted out. But if we don't say anything, well, then shit, it's just going to be what it is,
Yep. That's just the way it goes. But look it up. They're there for us to inform, and
they really are.
And there's so much information. I mean, we can go into each classification of American Bully from pocket.
One thing that I think, that I think we really need to get into is movement, and movement. Let's see if we can bring the WBA up. Movement, but movement is, to me, one of those things where you cannot hide the fault when the dog is moving. So if the dog has a high rear or a bad back, when it's moving, you're going to see it. If the dog is angulated, or has no angulation and is walking on stilts, you're going to see it. You know what I'm saying? You can't hide that. In a stack, a good handler will be able to hide certain things, or I wouldn't say hide, show you the best traits of the dog, right? That's what a handler should do, right? It's not really hide the fault, but show you its best traits that the dog has and try to put those traits ahead of the bad traits, right?
Right. I mean, movement is easily defined. You can see a dog that's not moving correctly.
Right. So
you got to take off your blinders and kennel blinders, and you got to see it.
So the gait for the American Bully breed exudes a lively and confident attitude created by expression that is eagerly anticipates encountering something new and exhilarating at any given moment. Its trotting gait is characterized by an effortless, powerful, and well-coordinated movement showcasing commendable extension in the front and strong drive in the rear. What does that mean? That means that the dog, when he's moving, should not be short in the front. This is the reach of the dog. The dog should be able to extend as far as it can, to reach as far as it can, while meanwhile the drive or the rear of the dog is in balance and sequence to be able to move forward and powerfully push the dog forward, right?
That's right.
Hence the reach and the drive of the dog. So with that being said, what does the WBA look for? Is that exact thing, that there is no restriction in that the reach and the drive are both equivalent and can make the dog move harmoniously. That's why a lot of people say, oh man, the dog floats. That's what they mean. It's moving in harmony with itself. Everything is in balance like a well-oiled locomotive, instead of when you have a shorter rear in the back or a shorter front and the dog is not put together in a balanced way and the front is shorter. Sometimes a lot of people get to understand and say, oh, well, that dog has a high rear. No, maybe the dog is short in the front and it's pushing the rear up. So understanding these things and how the measurements need to equivalate to each other to form balance for the dog, that's what we need to dive into. As a community, look into these standards and dive into that,
That's every category in the standard matters. Yes. Every category, you can't overlook movement. You can't overlook a bad bite. You can't overlook body. You can't overlook none of these things. There are certain things you can overlook.
Yeah.
But I could tell you that sometimes those are the things that we want to look at.
Right.
And we focus a lot of time on these things that we don't need to focus on, but like to focus on.
Right.
But I think that's why having the standard and the registries have the standard written for us to follow. We can look it up. We could read it. We could do our due diligence and understand why every single one of these characteristics, whether it's a coat, whether it's the neck, they're important.
Absolutely. And the coat should be tight. It should be a tight skinned dog. It should not be a hairy dog or have abscessive fur. You know what I'm saying? That's pretty common. You know, the pit bull was never a fluffy.
No.
You know what I mean? Like,
no.
So, you know, it's just.
Nor was he ever a bulldog.
Was he ever a bulldog?
Never.
Well, you know, we called them back in the day bulldogs, but those were back in the day, and they were still game dogs, you know. So
this is like a pit bull. It could have been any kind of dog as long as he was in the pit.
That's it.
But that's play of words, not really where we're at today.
Right.
Today we actually have a standard. We actually have an American bully, and we have the capability behind it.
Yeah, too. And the capability to progress something good and preserve a real nice animal, you know? So in the standard, we're going to dive into the classes, okay? And so in the WBA, the classic variety is recommended a height range of fully grown standard male between 17 and 20 inches to the withers, while for standard females, it is between 16 and 19 inches to the withers. So anywhere from 17 to 20 inches is recommended for the standard size male. And anywhere from 16 to 19 inches is for the standard female. Obviously, the females are smaller. Males should always be a little bit bigger in size and girth and bone. You know, and also one thing I believe is females should look feminine. They shouldn't be these butch ass dogs. I don't know where people get this shit from, man. They're like, hey, we want a really big, girthy she-male. Like, no, man, you know, I want a pretty, beautiful woman, you know. A beauty pageant is beauty, you know.
That's all. Hey, I like me an ugly one every day. Make her real big.
So now we get into and that was the standard, right? That was the standard.
Yeah, we're standard.
And we'll look at the standard in the UKC, which is from 17 to 20 and 16 to 19. So it's the same. It's the same height.
Now, when we say standard, we're not saying the standard.
No, we're saying the standard class, the variety
class.
Right? And in the standard, it's labeled variety. So let's call it variety.
We don't want to get it confused.
Well, and then I know there's going to be a few people in here that really have read the standard. They're going to be like, hey, wait a minute. What are you talking about here?
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah.
But
hopefully they don't, because they're knowledgeable and they know what we're talking about.
Exactly. But still though, we encourage everybody, read that standard, you know?
Read the standard.
Read the standard because you need to understand it. In order to have a successful campaign for any dog, as a handler, as a breeder, you have to understand the standard, you know? So now we dive into the pocket class, okay? The pocket class, the ideal height and range for a mature pocket male is between 17 to 14 inches for the males and 16 to 13 inches for the females, okay? Now, does that mean they have to be, you know, exactly, if they go over 17, you know, and 3/4, is that going to really be a make or break deal? Like,
I say yes, but I'm ruthless. I like that, but I could say no too.
Well, you know, then they have those dogs that are considered tweeters, right? Where they're like,
right.
He's right in between there, you know, and he can fit in here and he can fit in there, but you know, we don't know. I think that there comes a point now where we need to really emphasize that, and maybe, you know, before the shows, really measure those dogs, before the show. I've seen and in a few places where they put a classic dog because of what they believe is their phenotype is more of a classic dog, so they'll put them in a classic class when the classic class has a height standard. It's the height that makes the variety. It's not the look. I don't understand where this all derived from, I've seen in other registries where people have been in the pockets, right? And then because they don't do well in the pockets, they'll shoot them to the classics. And it's like, well, this dog is short, but yeah, he looks like a classic. Well, we're not really here to, judge the phenotype and the variety. It's the height. That's what brings you to your different classes, So that most definitely is something that, and I'm going to be honest, I've seen this a lot in the ABKC. A lot, because they're searching for more of a bigger dog. So all these other dogs that they believe don't fit that phenotype or look more classic or terrier, may they say, now that's another word, terrier. Then they decide, well, hey, if the dog isn't, extreme enough or bully enough, then let's just throw them in the classics. And you have pockets in there competing against real classic dogs that are the size, variety correctly measured in their correct class. So where do we go about that? That's a good question. Let's dabble into that some other time,
Well, like we said, that is one thing that we did through our educating ourselves. We see the wording in the standard, the written standard, to be, either really, really tight or really, really loose.
Very loose in some places. And so I think that
it's important to know that there is a standard.
Yes.
And that it has been written.
Yes.
And, you can go as early as registration's births where they wrote these standards.
Yes.
And they're there,
The XL, the height of the XL should be, the ideal height range for a mature male is over 20 inches to 23 inches at the withers. For mature females is at 19 inches to 22 inches to the withers. So yes, they are the taller dog. That the XL should always be the taller dog, right? I think that as far as the varieties go and the standard, we kind of went over some pretty good basis of it, right? I mean, we all understand, what were the basics of it, now it's really up to you guys to look up these standards, to dive into them, and this is one of the reasons why we have this podcast today, because we really encourage that,
Evaluate them. Go out there and see where you're best fit to compete.
Yes.
And what it is that you're striving for.
Yes.
This is a big community. There's a place for all of us. Just remember that.
Yes.
Even though, the live mic is always here. And
well, like we've been saying, if the most powerful thing that we can all do as a community is educate ourselves, and I think that with understanding the standard as a handler, you have a better point of view to be able to pick a good dog that's going to make you a winning handler. As a breeder, you look at the standard and it provides the detailed blueprint on what you're looking for, on how to stringently look at a puppy and break it down and understand what you're trying to build. If this is a show dog, if this doesn't fit the standard, how far away am I as a breeder from the standard?
That's right.
Do I need to restart again? Do I need to bring in females or bring in males that are going to do these things for me? Like, this is where the standard really, takes a forefront. And if you're a good breeder, you're going to take that, because a good builder always reads instructions, man.
That's right.
Always reads instructions, you know? It doesn't matter how long you've been building a house. When they bring you something, it's the blueprint. It's the blueprint. You know, it's the blueprint on how to do it. So we encourage everybody, dive in, educate yourself, educate the rest of the people. If you guys can bring a little bit of light to some of the registries, you know, on what things maybe to do a little different, hey, why not? You know, all the registries are available for you guys to get a hold of. You know, some may be harder than others, but I can tell you this, that, you know, if you guys ever have any kind of question or anything like that, and, you know, and we're at a WBA show, man, feel free to come up and ask. You know, the worst question is the one that's never asked.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So, you know, we encourage everybody. And with this little topic that we had, I think it's a good intro for the rest of you guys to really dive in and
check out your standards.
Check out your standards, dude. Check out your standards. And like, again, you know, this show will be available on Spotify. Check us out, Spotify. Check us out on YouTube. You know, follow. There's always going to be new content coming out. Next week is also going to be a good topic. So we'll bring out a little bit more of that as we get into it. But, you know, for now, I think this was a great podcast, you know, a great podcast. We had a lot of good information.
Yeah, we appreciate all you guys for tuning in on this live. Like Johnny said, we'll be on Spotify, and check us out on Instagram. Until then, we hope to see you guys at the show.
Yes, this upcoming weekend, man. WBA show, Claremont. It's going to be awesome.
Indian Hills.
Indian Hills. Be there, man. Be there. Be square. Yo, catch you guys at the next time.
Bullies on Parade, where the mic is live
and the standards are high.